Welcome to the installation video for Falcon Ridge's Velocity flip-up windshield for Can-Am Defender and Polaris mid and full-size Rangers. This is part number 50-50246 kit for the Can-Am Defender, 50-50219 kit for the Polaris full-size Ranger, and 50-50221 kit for the mid-size Ranger. Now this process should take at least a couple of hours, but you're always up for a project, so grab your tools. You got this. Now, if you need any help, send us an email at service@falconridge.com. We recommend following the paper manual included in your kit. Check out your parts list and make sure you have all the parts you need before you get started. The tools you'll need for this are 4, 5, and 6 mm hex wrenches, 10, 12, and 13 mm opened end wrenches, 13 mm socket and 10 mm deep socket wrenches, and a small flathead screwdriver. Alright, let's get started. First thing to do is place your windshield on a flat, clean surface with clean fabric underneath to prevent scratching. If these two holes are slightly right of center, then you have laid this out correctly. It also helps if the windshield hangs off the edge a little. Take the two ball brackets and orient them like this, one on either side. Fasten an M6x18 button head bolt through the top hole of each bracket with an M6 flange lock nut using the 4 mm Allen wrench and the 10 mm open wrench. Do the other side the same way. Now take the tube assembly, making sure to keep the M6x45 button head bolt in the middle of the brace mounting block. Remove all the other nuts and bolts using the 4 mm hex wrench. Now you already know to make sure to lay the mount in order to keep track of what goes where, so it's all where you need it to be when you put it back together. Or you could just reference page 4 of your installation manual. Place the tube assembly on the inside of the windshield with the captive nut pockets facing upwards. Align the mounting block holes to match that of the windshield. Insert two M6x45 button head bolts through the middle block here and here. Use a 4 mm hex wrench to put two M6 lock nuts in their captive pockets and screw on only a few threads deep to allow for adjustment later. Fasten M6x40 button head bolts and M6 lock nuts a few threads in to secure the smaller mounting blocks more towards the outside. If this isn't lining up with the windshield easily, you might need to rotate the tube like this. Check the alignment of the end mounting blocks, rotate the tube if needed, then gently flex each corner of the windshield towards the tube. This allows you to insert the M6x50 mm button head bolt through the windshield, bottom ball bracket hole, and end mounting block. Use the M6 lock nut in the captive pocket to fasten the bolt. Again, only a few threads in. Then do the other side like this. Alright, now we'll fill in the gap at both end mounting blocks by snapping shims under each one. Once this is snapped in, go along the tube assembly and tighten all the nuts and bolts and make sure they are snug, except the middle one, working from the middle outwards. Then remove 2 ball studs from each gas spring for a total of 4 ball studs. To do this, pry up the metal retaining clip with a small flathead screwdriver, pull out the ball stud, then replace the retaining clip where it was before. Now install 1 ball stud into each ball bracket using an M8 lock nut like this. Do it so the ball faces inwards. Tighten it down with a 13 mm and 12 mm wrench on the outside and inside respectively. You can also use a ratchet. Set the other 2 ball studs aside for later. Install the T-handle onto the middle cylinder with the M8x30 socket head bolt using a 6 mm hex wrench. Now, flip that windshield over for the next steps. Now attach the lower hinge weldment to the outer side of the windshield. With this flipped, you can put the M8x16 mm bolts straight in from above and fasten loosely with M8 lock nuts. The bolt head should be on the metal side and the nuts should be on the inner side. Then install the center retainer on the inside of the windshield using 2 M6x30 button head bolts with M6 lock nuts. Now place the strike plate on the frame, fitting the bolt into the factory hole on the roll cage. Now use that 10 mm deep socket wrench to load up the 10 mm nut, insert it in the other side of the factory hole over here, and tighten it up. If you have a Polaris Ranger, this part of the process looks like this, and this may require a little extra attention. Take the passenger strike plate and orient it on your cage. Insert a M6x20 socket head bolt through the strike plate and hole while using a 10mm socket wrench to hold the flange nut in place. When in place, turn the bolt with your fingers to get it initially threaded into the nut. Finish the job and tighten with your 5mm hex wrench. Be careful to keep the strike plate aligned correctly while doing this, and then repeat on the other side. Do them one at a time and try not to drop them. Now for a mid-size Ranger, orient the part as shown. Then remove the 2 bolts holding the buckle on from the outside. Attach the plate using the 2 supplied M8x50 button head bolts and M8 lock nuts. Once in place, use a 5mm hex wrench to tighten the bolt from the inside, and use a 13mm hex wrench or socket wrench to fasten the M8 lock nut from the buckle side. Make sure to keep the strike plate aligned while doing both. Now, all the following steps are the same for all 3 vehicles, so let's return to our Defender assembly. Thread the other M8 ball studs into each of these 2 ball stud clamps like so. Take the clamp, loosen its bolts, and put it on the vehicle frame. Get it back finger tight so it stays up on its own, but it's still adjustable. Space the clamp so the bottom edge is 12.5 inches from the center hole of the strike plate. When you get that where it needs to be, tighten it down as much as you can. If it's too loose, it's going to make a big mess out of the gas spring install, and we don't want that. Now thread an M8 jam nut into each rod end until the nut can't go any further. Then thread each M8 rod end into the upper hinge weldment like this. Stop when the rod end is perpendicular to the hinge weldment. Do this for both the right and the left side. The next steps will require your roof to be off your vehicle, so go ahead and remove it if you haven't already. Loosely attach the upper hinge assemblies to the vehicle frame with M8 button head bolts and M8 lock nuts. You'll use a 5mm hex wrench and 13mm socket wrench to do this. Now place the windshield on the frame of the vehicle while keeping the center retainer under the header panel. Adjust the windshield so the holes of the hinges are aligned. To connect the hinges, insert an M8x50 button head bolt through the rod and lower hinge and loosely fasten with M8 lock nuts. Repeat this with the other side. Then tighten both sides up very well. Check the hinges for alignment. The bolt hinges on either side can be loosened to adjust the windshield seating. The M8x50 button head bolt through the center can also act to pull the windshield towards either side. You'll know it's adjusted well when it's centered within the windshield frame and nothing's obstructing it. Once aligned, tighten all those bolts down. Gently press the bottom corners of the windshield in to latch the strikers into the strike plates, but make sure not to slam it yet. To set the strikers, you can loosen the 2 set screws right here. Just do one at a time though. This will allow you to set the length of the strikers. If you didn't have enough length initially, loosening the screw will let the striker lengthen until it hits the strike plate. And if there was too much, you can take in the slack from the cable until it fits. Make sure there's no slack in either line when you tighten both set screws back up. Okay, now install the rub plate. If it doesn't come set up like this, arrange these pieces and this bolt together before placing it in your setup. Slide the rub plate under the center retainer while the window is still propped open. Tighten it down. And then you can simply snap each gas spring clip over the corresponding ball stud. The larger ends will snap on towards the top, and the smaller ends will snap on toward the bottom. Make sure you've done both sides. Now that you're done, twist the T-handle to open the windshield. Then you can simply pull it back to close it. And you don't have to worry about being as gentle. You can also now put your roof back on your vehicle. Thanks a lot for spending some time with us today. And if you require any further assistance, contact us through our website, falconridge.com. At Falcon Ridge, we're fueled by your passion.